Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday Talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm your host, Nora Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yay! And yay to have all of you here. So, Mushtaq, why don't you give us a little bit about
About
what
what we're
we
doing
plan on
tonight,
talking about? Yeah.
this very evening, in front of God and everybody. We're going to be talking about um, the idea of the seven levels of the human beings, starting with Gurdjieff's perspective, because most people are who would listen to us are liable to have a sense of that. And if they don't, it's easier to access than the Sufi perspective, though they are very, very similar.
And though some of you haven't been exposed to the Sufi, the Sufi stuff before, so
Yeah.
all of you,
Anyway, we're
hopefully
going to
you'll
have
find
fun
something
and
you
we're
can
going to
sink
talk
your teeth
about a bunch
into.
of silly stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about what it takes to be a complete human being, according to Mr. Gurdjieff et al.
At all. Ibn Arabi, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we have to look forward to. In the
Yes.
meanwhile, y'all get to sit through our spiel where we invite you to like, subscribe, and perhaps even leave a comment on our YouTube channel. We're always excited to have people do that.
Yeah,
And
we have a special half off sale on subscriptions. This week only. If you subscribe, it will only cost you half as much as it usually does.
so feel free to join in that way. And if you want to get in touch with us off YouTube, then of course you can join our email list, join our Facebook group. I recommend you do at least the email because then you can keep in touch with us directly, and that's a lovely thing. Other than that, we got all those links in the description for our, swag, one-on-one sessions or two-on-one sessions, and of course, you can always just donate, and that helps keep on going. Helps us keep on keeping on. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, whether you're here live or on the replay. It's wonderful to spend this time together. So we're going to be covering it is fun to talk about these things as long as we don't get too wrapped up in them, of course. So as Mushtaq said, we are going to be covering the seven man characters of the Gurdjieff model, as well as covering a bit about the Sufi, modes of the Nafs, as it were, along the continuum of um, refinement of the Nafs, we should say. And then we're going to visit some of the ideas, the cosmology and such of Ibn Arabi, because that's also, interestingly enough, an important part of the conversation that we want to have when it comes to developing what Gurdjieff would call a true inner eye. So, Mushtaq, where would you like to lead us off on this?
Well, we should probably do a brief overview of
Yeah, what is all what
what Gurdjieff's seven men are.
yeah, what the hell? And remember, I think it's always important to remember that when we say man, we mean it in the general sense. This is the word
Human.
he used. We think of
Human.
it as human. Yes.
Yes. We are like Ferengi in that sense. Human.
So men, women, non-binary folks, doesn't matter who you are, you get to, see where you fit in this paradigm.
Yeah. Homo sapien, whatever.
Hmm.
So we're going to start out just a brief overview of Gurdjieff's anthropology, as it were. And he starts talking about the first three men, man number one, man number two, man number three. And even though we put numbers on them like that, they are best thought of horizontally rather than vertically. Because all three of these are what he calls machine man. Um, and they're just organized by what center dominates. So man number one is dominated by the moving center, the instinctive center. And he talks about center of gravity. What the center of gravity is, and because that's going to come up over and over again in this talk, the center of gravity is where do you, where, what reliably runs you? Where do you go to when you fall asleep? What is your favorite mode of mechanicalness?
Yeah. When all else fails, what, like Mushtaq said, what do you fall back on? What drives you no
Yeah.
matter what you do?
And we like to say, where does your attention fixate?
Hmm.
And Gurdjieff says everyone is born as one, two, or three. I don't know if you're born as one, two, or three, but I think you fixate at one, two, or three very early on in your life, before your teens. And these three are mechanical humanity. So man number one is the moving center. And for this individual, the instinctive functions outweigh emotional and thinking functions. That's what motivates you as a stimulus response meat robot. Man number two is emotionally led.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the emotional center that runs you.
So, yeah, this is stuff like emotions,
Feeling.
passions, subjective, perceptions, that kind of thing.
And man number three is the intellectually led. The center of gravity falls in the intellectual center. This is the false man of reason because man number three is no more reasonable or rational or logical than any of the other two. They just seem that way because they talk from their heads rather than from their hearts or their bellies. And this is approaching things mainly from theories and considerations. Now, how do you get out of that? You move your center of gravity to what Gurdjieff calls man number four. And according to him, this only happens in a school. And what it does is it uh, begins to create a permanent center of gravity in relation to the work.
Yeah. So,
The
what do we
work
mean?
becomes what is most important.
Yeah.
I have
So,
to say that I think that this only happens in a school was a marketing strategy more than the absolute truth.
right.
But
And this is also where they say you have to have a teacher, otherwise it's impossible, right? To
yeah,
move
and the
forward
fact of
beyond.
the matter is that you have to do the work. You
That's
have to
the
be
real
motivated
requirement.
to do the work.
Yeah.
Your center of gravity has to become the idea of doing the work. That's what you need to be drawn back to over and over again. When you do this, the first three centers begin to balance in you. It's a long process sometimes, but it is the process of balance that we want. Oh my God, I just realized.
But
There. Now you can let people in.
now you made me a host.
I made you a host.
Good. So far, do we have any questions? I know most of you may have some you know, experience with Gurdjieff stuff in this way. But any questions so far? Okay,
Okay. Yeah, we want to go over this as quick, more quick than not.
because we got lots of stuff to build on here.
Yeah. So, man number five, this is when the I crystallizes. It's Gurdjieff's language. This is when you change from all of the little eyes floating around to the one permanent eye that exists beneath them. This is what he means by crystallization.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean change in the ordinary way. And the problem here is that five can result from right work or wrong work. Wrong
Yes.
crystallization will block further development and may require melting down and trying it again, which is painful.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we discussed that, but we delved into that in some detail in talks from, I would say, 2020,
Yeah,
2021,
somewhere
around
back
then.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll probably talk about it again.
Hmm.
Wrong crystallization basically is being tricked into uh, the fantasy work, mostly tricked by you.
You yourself. Yeah.
Yes, you yourself. And if you get stuck in the fantasy work, you end up spiritually bypassing and going off into la la land and all of that kind of stuff.
To some extent, anyone on the path, they've been there. So
Yeah.
everyone's been there. It's whether you can recognize that that makes it possible or not to move forward. And sometimes it takes a teacher to help you do that, to see it.
Yep. It takes a teacher or it takes crashing and burning and then recovering.
Hmm. Yep.
So, man number six is uh, it's very close to man number seven, but it's not permanent. It is having will, having consciousness, having a conscience, having a permanent, what Gurdjieff calls the permanent, unchangeable I. This is the witness. This is that which is the seer when you stop identifying with the scene. Uh, all the groovy stuff, but it's not yet permanent. It's really easy at this point to go back into your mechanical habits. This is point six is, or man six is the most work of any of these. Uh, man
Slippery.
seven
Yeah.
is the full development that is possible to a human being who is living on this plane of existence. So you have your your individuality, you have your true I, you have consciousness, you have conscience, you have intention, you have attention, and it's
Presence
permanent.
then. Yep.
Yeah.
Permanent. Yeah.
You've gone from state to station between six and seven, as we would say. And Gurdjieff uses the 19th and 20th, early 20th century languages of higher bodies. But this has nothing to do with bodies. You are not a Russian doll with one body inside of another, inside of another. This has to do with, uh, how would you say? I like Tim Leary's idea of circuits opening up in the brain, of more access to all of yourself. And forget about things like astral and mental and cosmic bodies and all of this. They really don't relate to reality very well. But the thing is, what you get is real will. You are able to create and maintain intention. You get a real I, which is true presence. And you get real ability to focus on what it is you need to work on. So, what we're not talking about here is any kind of personality typology. Because if you know anything about the Enneagram of personality, you will hear some echoes here. Because this talks about the chief feature, which is the center of gravity.
Mhm.
But it ain't personality.
Yeah, the centers and all of that. Sometimes people get so stuck on those that the word is identify with them. And
Yeah,
that's essentially what the practice of adhering to the typology of the Enneagram is. It's
yeah,
identification. It's I hate to say it, but it's getting stuck as opposed to seeing this for the breathing continuum of development it actually is.
yeah. And that's when we talk about the fantasy work.
Mhm.
That's what we're talking about. And if anybody wants to disagree with me, just show me somebody who has developed themselves into what Gurdjieff's idea of man number seven by doing the Enneagram of personality. I'd be happy to see it.
So we have a question from RM.
Yes.
She asks, are personas dissolved at human number seven?
No. Why would you want to do that?
Here's the thing, you're still in the world. And as we say time and time again, personas are tools and vehicles for moving through the world in a way that allows us to be part of it, to be engaged, to interact with other beings, and to get things done, um, in every sense. However, at seven, the idea is that you realize and understand in a very grounded and at home sort of way that none of those personas are who you actually are, even as you may utilize them in day-to-day
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, you understand that persona is something that you do, not something that you are.
Mhm.
And think about this. If you could not act as a physician when you're with a patient, what would happen?
Aaron says makes sense. So, Khalil offers us an opinion. He says, I would submit that A.H. Almas Hamid Ali, we're familiar with him,
Yeah.
appears to me and to others in the Diamond approach to be a man number six or seven, and that school very much relies on the Enneagram of personality.
I would have to disagree with you on that, at least in my experience with him, which is from several years ago. But I've always experienced him as understanding the Enneagram, picking it up as a tool, but not using it in the same way that the Enneagram of personality people use it. That was not my experience of him and his work. Um, and yeah, he could be a man six or seven by now. Who knows? But I don't think that he achieved that through working with the Enneagram of personality. I think that he achieved that before he ever picked that up. But that's just my opinion.
And from what I've read, I mean, I've read the books, I haven't met him in person. I felt like he was pushing us to go further. Like, sure, of course, you can take the types, but why stop there? Let that motivate you to keep going and to even detach from that labeling. Yeah. So many people need a doorway before they can even begin to realize that there's more beyond that
Yeah.
room that they've entered. You know what I mean? So, anyways, thank
Yeah.
you, Philip.
Yeah. And Almas's work is, in my experience, three-dimensional, whereas the Enneagram of personality stuff is two-dimensional, if that makes sense.
Good. Great. All right, good nuance. Let's move
Yeah.
on. Where were we?
We were talking about why it's not a personality typology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So think of man one, two, and three as mechanical humanity organized around one dominant center. And this is taken from Ouspensky, his description of what Gurdjieff said. And the unified and crystallized stages culminating in a permanent I and real will. So last week we talked about the four uh, ego deaths.
hmm
And man number four comes out of the first fana that we talked about. The
Does anyone remember what that was?
can you tell us, Miss Noor?
Yeah. It's
فناء الأحكام.
Yes.
there you go. Yes. That's right. RM mentions conditioning. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the uh, fana al-akam is the withdrawal from the mechanical world. It's seeing that you're living as a machine and going, I don't want to do that anymore. So we contrast this and connect it to the idea of the seven levels of the Nafs. Nafs means ego, means person, means persona, means a lot of different things. And it starts out kind of the same thing. You have the Nafs al-Amara, which is the commanding self. Yeah, the Quran says it incites the self that incites to evil, but it's that is a weird way of talking about it in English because it's not just it's the self that incites to mechanical habit. It's the self that incites to not ever having to think about anything. It's the self that is, uh,
Oblivious to consequences
yeah,
or
oblivious to conscience.
yes. And feels powerless to do anything about that.
Yeah. Then you get the second level of the nafs, which is the self-reproaching nafs, nafs al-lawama. And this is the beginning of conscience at this point. At the first stage of the nafs, there is no conscience. The second you start having conscience, and that's why it feels like self-reproaching because you're going, don't do that. That's bad. Don't pull the wings off that fly.
Or, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
I am ashamed. maybe I'm a bad person. You know, that whole spiral. That is a classic manifestation of uh this aspect of the nafs.
Yeah. And then the third level, Mutmaina, is the tranquil soul, the the pleased, the pleasing.
Yeah, that comes um later.
Inspired is another word for it. Actually, I think I got that wrong. Uh,
Yeah, that comes
yeah,
down the road.
three is Madhima, the inspired self, as
Money.
opposed to
Yeah,
the tranquil self. Excuse me.
you're right. Yeah. How
Yeah.
did we get that mixed up? We
I I get things. I'm old. I get things mixed up
yeah.
all the
There's a
time.
lot of M names
Sometimes
to
I
these
put
nafs too.
my right shoe on my left foot,
Yeah. So
and
yeah,
then I don't even notice it.
this
Walk to the
is
bathroom in the middle of the night and go, why does the ground feel so?
yeah. So yes, this is Mulkima.
And those first three are uh, pretty much equivalent to the man one, man two, and man three. You know, Amara is pure instinct. Lawama is emotion without a doubt. And inspired, the Mulhima, the inspired nafs, is thinking in your head, but they're all mechanical. So we have talked about uh, the levels of the nafs multiple times in our videos. So basically it moves to being driven, to experiencing emotion around your behavior, to be inspired by your thinking, to eventually at what would be four, a sense of almost inner peace when you realize that what you really need to do is the work. Then to contentment, to um, be feeling approved of, and finally into Safiya, which is purity, perfection, and that's man number seven. So the other idea that we want to enter into here is the idea of the insan al-kamil, the completed human. Kamil is often translated as perfect, but I think perfect is the wrong word. Wrong word to translate that. It is better for our uses to translate it as complete, which is the true human being, the human being without quotes, the human being that is acting from conscience and uh, a permanent I, who has actual will, has actual consciousness, has a permanent I, and their own individuality, as well as their own universality, because you get both. And you are no longer uh, being controlled by your little eyes. though you don't make them go away because some of them are very, very useful. And so they become tools. Anybody got an idea of what a mechanical pattern might be that could be useful to you?
How to drive.
That is one of my favorite examples because if you try and drive uh, using your pure consciousness, you're going to wrap yourself around a tree.
Maybe breathing.
Breathing is another one, yes. So breathing is a sort of a bridge because you can either let the mechanical breathing pattern take over for you, which is what most of us do most of the day, or you can breathe consciously. So it's an interface between the two. But yes, breathing.
I'm a little confused by when you say that, and this is from what Nora's just posted in the chat, but you had said it earlier that number 5 is content, pleased, 6 is pleasing, approved.
So,
I
yeah,
find myself kind of puzzled
I
by,
can
Yeah,
understand why it's
yeah.
like to be content or pleased, it means like you are settling into yourself, kind of. It's like you are able to be with what is a bit more rather than fighting to change things because you're just so gung-ho about your enthusiasms for spirituality or training or whatever it is. You're starting to realize, oh, like right where I'm at is where things are happening and where they need to happen. And I'm okay with that. I'm content with that being my responsibility. This is how I understand it. And then when we get to pleasing or approved, it's kind of like the, if we want to anthropomorphize, you know, truth, reality, it's almost like God is pleased with you. You're not just pleased with God, but God is pleased with you.
now that's an interesting twist on the normal meaning, but that does make a whole lot more sense to me.
Hmm.
Yeah, and those two are the ones that most people struggle with, strangely enough, in my experience.
All right. RM says, question on practices. What will be the difference at level 5 from level 6? So the ones that I was just talking about. Ah,
At level 5, you are still taking the fragments of your eye and gluing them back together. It's almost like all of the little personalities that run around in your head, all of the mechanical programs are a puzzle, and you have to complete the puzzle.
yeah. It's kind of like you're trying to sort out the cards you've been dealt and put them in order. And 6 is kind of like you've done that. You're at a point where it's really generative work in staying the course. Generative work meaning you've worked on most of your shit, your trauma, your old stuff, and deepening into being with what is. You're not always successful. In fact, perhaps frequently you're not, but you make a consistent, concerted effort and it pays off.
And so when we talk about man number 7, uh, well, we should probably say a little bit more about the insan al-kamil.
Mm.
Uh,
Was that helpful, RM? Mm. The perennial question, and let's hold on to that. But we will revisit that.
yeah. So the answer is a little weird. So Ibn Arabi's concept of the completed human, um, he put it in the Sufic tradition of being the embodiment of all of the names, not merely moral improvement, but the actual, the names manifest themselves in you. And by names, we're talking about the divine qualities.
Yeah, so this is kind of the macrocosm and the microcosm kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you have the formal 99 names, but the names of the divine unity are infinite. There is no limit to those qualities. And this gets us to how these connect. And the connection is the permanence of the I as a vehicle for divine vice regency.
Yeah, that is
That's
such
an
a
Arabic
classic.
word. Yeah.
Yeah, the divine vicegerency. It's kind of like you are God's representative. You are, you're the Hmm. You are one of the primary vessels through which the divine makes things happen on the physical plane. Yes, RM says Khalifa on earth. Yes. Like a steward, shall we say.
Yeah. And that means you are entrusted with manifesting divine reality. And you can only do that through yourself. And just as you have the three centers, if you could say that Gurdjieff's man number 7, the Nafs al-ṣāfiyyah, and the insani kamil represent the perfection of the three centers. Gurdjieff's man number 7 is a stable, conscious, unified I, and not just mechanical reactions. Being able to operate from that I. The Nafs al-ṣāfiyyah is the egoic fragmentation and turbulence that we usually experience become purified and settled into a stable spiritual orientation.
I mean, you're not all over the place.
Yeah. And then the insan al-kamil is a fully actualized human being, all firing on all 3 centers, having a permanent magnetic center that holds you to the work, and having having all the names.
Being able to embody all the names. Yeah. And realizing that you are both, your unified essence and also deeply, unfathomably complex.
Yeah. So what does the purified nafs gives you? It gives you freedom from the inner distortions and twisted perceptions, and inattention. All of these things are quieted. What does that mean? So one of our students, who is a Muslim, had somebody come onto a post that he made somewhere, a right-wing American who's doing this, all Muslims are evil and we need to destroy you and you are the enemy, etc., etc., etc. And he was upset, as one might imagine. And he talked with us, and we pointed out to him that all you're doing is hearing the gears chattering in a machine. His perceptions are completely twisted because of his own internal imbalances. And it has nothing to do with him, has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with Noor. And it's not even our job to change him. That's what Nafs al-ṣāfiyyah frees you from, is first of all doing that yourself, because we all have that inside of us. Every single one of us has twisted perception in some area or another. And our job is to work on that for ourselves. And we're not responsible for other people's twisted perceptions. There are situations where you have to protect yourself from that, but mostly you have to protect yourself from your own twisted perceptions.
I think we can fit this in to the current thread. James says, the impression I've had for a few years now is that all phenomena represent God. No one person is a special capital R representative in that sense. But if you are complete in the sense we're talking about, it's a lot more enjoyable because you're not so busy with futile ego strategies. I like that. Ego strategies.
Yeah. I don't know if there are not some people who are special, who have not been in the past special representatives of the divine reality. That's what prophets were. There are no more prophets. Ain't seen a prophet in a long time. Maybe they were. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you for sure. but that would be the one exception that I would say is there have been times when somebody spoke for the divine reality in a special way. But everybody pretty much agrees that we're done with that. My teacher said, God got tired of our shit. And so he isn't sending anybody anymore because it doesn't do you any good. Work with what you have. But I like that last part.
The bit about ego strategies.
Yeah, I like that part. That's a good description.
Well, if it's almost like a fully enlightened being wouldn't know they're enlightened because they're not bothered with it anymore. Not because they're apathetic, but because they're just living the actual life, not the head games, something like that.
That's a really good point, and it touches on something that I didn't have an opportunity to say earlier, but even if we recognize ourselves in any of these labels, hold it lightly. Don't, wear it like a coat. It's not meant to be like that. It's just at best, it's a waypointer or okay, a way to strategize as opposed to something to just use as another way to get wrapped up in all of the stuff that we tend to get wrapped up in.
So we need to understand that this work is not primarily psychological. In my researching on this and going through some of the writing, so I made sure that I got everything right, I ran across the word theomorphic.
Fancy.
Yeah, fancy word. But I prefer ontological, psychological versus ontological. And there's a place for both. We were mentioning Almas earlier. A significant portion of his work, it appears to me, to be psychological. It is bringing people to what I call the 0 point, where you are no longer doing remedial work and can begin to do the generative work.
This is the beginning of the answer to your question, RM, that you asked me before. How do you know when you're ready to, or the difference between remedial and generative and when to move on?
Yeah, and the real answer to that question is you don't know. That's what teachers are for. And if you try without some sort of knowing, you end up oftentimes lost in the fantasy work.
So let's yeah, you began to, Mushtaq. You were delineating psychological versus ontological.
Ontological, yeah. Gurdjieff, some of his work was psychological, and I think that the idea of the unity of eyes is his version of the psychological work that would take place in his Man 4 and 5 when you start defragging the hard drive, as it were. And his idea of developing true consciousness and real will is part of his work. 'Cause, when we look at the Sufi perspective, especially through Ibn Arabi, uh, the mirror of Gurdjieff's work is the idea of connecting with the the divine attributes, of replacing the human attributes with their divine counterparts, which is the process of fana that we talked about last week.
Getting all the way to fana in God,
Yeah.
through God.
And so Arabi would say that a person could be integrated psychologically and yet still not be the completed human unless the integration is theomorphic.
I think we gotta define terms.
So, theo, divinity, God, morphic, uh, changing, shaping. More than that.
I think, God always shows up in and through us. That is something I believe. But
Yeah.
when we go through this process, we are making that ever more obvious that it's true.
Yeah. I think the best way to define theomorphic is being formed in the likeness of the divine.
Yeah.
The Greek theos, God, and morphe means form or shape,
Mhm.
taking on God's shape.
Okay, so hold that thought, Osama. Yes, I'll repeat your question. Yes, Ian.
Well, as someone who started calling themselves an ontologist in the mid-90s, my ears obviously perked up when you mentioned ontology, but you haven't really said what you mean by that, because there are all sorts of uses of the term.
Well, yeah, but there's a general uh, understanding.
We're talking about
Yeah, the branch of metaphysics that deals with the nature of being is what
mhm,
ontology is. Fundamentally, you can put whatever window dressing on that you want, but that's the foundation of the idea. What is being?
Yeah, and from what I remember from my reading, that goes back to some monk in the 12th century. Can't remember his name.
It probably goes back to some Greek dude sitting on a mountain somewhere with his sheep going, "What is being?"
mm.
Yeah, I can tell you what my definition of an ontology is, but this is heavily influenced by its uses in technology. To me, ontology is the art and science of modeling a world, and the A is very important as opposed to the world.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a certain level of definition of the philosophical action, but I think that it's actually deeper than that. That's the existential, and we are more interested in the transcendental.
Certainly can't disagree with that.
Thanks, Ian. So Osama asks, can we give an example of an experiential level between the psychological and ontological approach? Hmm. Do you want to ask that out loud, Osama? So at least for me, I can understand exactly what you're looking for.
Sure. I mean, this kind of goes a few moments back talking about that it's the process itself is not merely psychological, but has an ontological approach or ontological dimension.
Hmm.
Even
Now,
an ontological foundation.
wait, you saying you meant ontological foundation?
Yeah, I said it could even have an ontological foundation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's the I understand maybe how in in the culture now how we understand psychology as being purely mental, right? Where it is, but it's not necessarily the meaning of the word psychology, where psyche meaning more something like soul, um, on a soul level. So I understand it that the approach or the process itself is not merely mental. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that what you're alluding to?
Sort of. uh, For me, psychology is uh, the science of dealing with pathology, mental pathology, that which is broken in a human.
Hmm.
And ontology is, here's an example of an ontological question that would apply to this. What is true? How do I know what is true? That's an ontological question.
Merci.
Um, so psychology might ask, how do I know that I'm okay? This Sufism would ask, how would I know that I am real?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's so that's the thing, even within the Arabic um language, right? Psychology is typically understood as ilm an-nafs, the knowledge of nafs,
Yes.
right? Which has a completely different dimension in its in the approach itself. Um, so I wonder if within the Sufi context or within the Arabic language itself, psychology and ontology is the same. Like even within Arabic language, ontology or the um, being or studying being, right, is the same as studying knowledge. Wujud or wajd is being and finding. Knowledge and being is one and the same thing. So maybe that's why I was having slightly um, hard time understanding
I
the
have something
definitions
that
and how we're
may or
using it.
may not help here. Um, I'm going to just write it. That would be, according to my English Arabic dictionary, the Arabic word for ontology. And it looks like the root of what it is wajud. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
that's just a romantic. That just says ontology in Arabic letters.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's just a transliteration of ontology, Mushtaq.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arg.
Damn it. I was hoping that we would discover something like this. I will ask people wiser than me uh, what the Sufi word that would be the equivalent of ontology would be.
I mean, it's Sufism in itself
Yeah,
is
Sufism in itself is an ontological practice.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I find that to be a very interesting characterization.
So we can, we can delve deeper into that when we can. But let's see. First of all, Khalil says Saint Anselm, but his contribution, I'm not sure what the context of that was. I'll just read it.
It was in answer to Ian's question. He was thinking about what philosopher from the past dealt with ontology.
Got
I
it.
was just
Okay.
referring to that.
Yeah, okay. So you were saying Saint Anselm, but his contribution was just an ontological proof of God. But he was not the inventor of the term ontological.
Could I say something about the history of ontology? Because I've studied
Yes,
this
please.
in depth. So ontology, the difference between ontology and psychology is basically that psychology arose as an empirical science or a quasi-empirical science in the turn of the century. So if you want a helpful indicator of what differentiates ontology from psychology, that is, ontology deals with that which is, psychology deals with appearances, because again, it's a science, and so it's empirical. It presumes to only analyze that which appears. So the reason that there might be like a distinction later on, especially in the history of science, is because philosophers kind of retrospectively looked back and said, oh, now we see what philosophers like Plato and Aristotle were doing. They weren't doing science, which again is empirical, dealing with, appearances, the things that appear. They were attempting to get to the depth of that which is really real.
And that's a decent working definition.
I think part of the magic of this group is that you can suddenly get somebody who has studied something in depth like that.
Yeah.
It's great.
If you haven't noticed, this group is designed to be for people who actually know stuff. Everybody here knows something. Everybody here has something to contribute. It's not just Noor and I.
Mm.
That's too much damn work.
Hmm.
RM, same book that you've been working on. Dr. Kustenbaum goes in deep with ontology within that book. But Khalil knows of a group that teaches clinical philosophy, so you might get in contact with him and uh, see what they have to offer.
Yeah, it's the APPA, American Philosophical Practitioners Association.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is basically based on something that Dr. Kustenbaum said back in the 70s when he was working on all of this. Most people are not psychologically broken. They are merely philosophically ignorant.
Nice. RM says, I actually sent my patient to clinical philosopher for anxiety treatment.
Yeah, works better than most anxiety drugs.
Nice. The future is now. All right. Nice. And Khalil has suggested as well The Supreme Identity by Alan Watts. Another one worth checking out. So I'm just going to reel us back in
Reel us
to
back in.
the topic for this evening, but this was a good tangent. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
So whether you call it Insan al-Kamil or call it man number 7, it is what we strive for. The unified operator, that's the man number 7, and the purified motive force and comprehensive realization of the divine reality put together in one thing. And that's what gives you man without quotes or woman without quotes,
etc. Without quotes. Yes. So these models we're not intending for them to line up perfectly. Like, oh, yeah,
yeah, and they don't.
Nafs level number 1 is the same as human number 1. That's not, no, no. This is just a way of comparing and contrasting and also finding the ways that they complement each other in terms of the different vantage points from which to view refining the self. And it gives us a fuller understanding because, as we can see, Gurdjieff's approach to the work of refinement was very much about kind of being a hard ass on yourself, really investigating the ways in which you get yourself stuck and how society has supported that getting stuck. And I feel like the Sufi approach, on the other hand, is more about clearing the way for more clarity within yourself. And providing a sense of stability and less fighting, more surrendering, if that makes sense. But either way, you're taking your responsibility is to get help where you need it while also taking ownership for your own refinement, taking ownership of your own refinement. And whether you talk to Gurdjieff or Ibn Arabi or any Sufi sheikh today, I think they will tell you that this is our birthright. To have the opportunity to reach that state of tranquility, of detachment from all of these false eyes, and to see the greater whole, of which we are a reflection. Yes, Ian.
Yeah, it occurred to me while you were talking that this is clearly related to autonomy. And I'd be very interested to hear whatever you might have to say on the relationship between autonomy and everything else we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly an important word to me.
Yeah.
While I think about that, what are your thoughts, Mushtaq, if you have any?
Wadat al-Wujud is the ultimate autonomy. That's my thought.
وحدة الوجود.
And
Yeah.
since I don't speak any Arabic whatsoever, you're going to need to expand on that.
That basically it means the unity of being, the oneness of consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah. And real autonomy is only possible when you have freed yourself from your mechanical behavior. What Gurdjieff called man 1, 2, and 3 has no autonomy. None. Zero. Zip.
Mm-hmm.
They are stimulus response meat machines with the possibility of being more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had basically just gone through my mind just before you said it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
That you can't be autonomous if you're in a mechanical state.
No, you cannot. Yes. You put it well, Mushtaq. I couldn't have said it better.
Thank
So
you. I said it mean. That's the
you
mean
said
way
it
of saying it.
clearly. Yeah.
So a couple of people have raised their hands.
Osama here.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Ian was saying about autonomy, and you touched on it, Mushtaq, as far as the first three levels being completely mechanical, and there's no autonomy in there, in that kind of state. And even within the Sufi sense and or the Sufi system, the third stage, quote unquote, or whatever, the Nafs al-mulhama, the inspired self, is typically seen as the most dangerous terrain within,
Absolutely, yes.
because the al-mulhama, it's inspired with what's right and what's wrong, or it
Mm-hmm.
has some kind of discernment, right? The yeah, the blade of discernment is getting sharper and sharper, hopefully. But if one is doing that by themselves without a circle, without somebody to kind of check, right? And it's like, oh, I just want to be autonomous in that way, but with no system of which one can bounce back, that uh, the nafs, the ego in that sense, will start to believe
Yeah.
its
You,
own
you,
imagination or its own things, right? So it will think that it knows best, it knows what's best for itself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
and then
Exactly.
it's a very short step to knows what's best for everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's how you get Abdul Wahab.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't know who that is, but
The guy who created Wahhabism.
oh, dang. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it kind of it touches on, I think, some aspect that you guys mentioned, which is a crystallizing, but the wrong way, or
Yeah.
right? Because one can start to believe their own ideas or thoughts or inspirations, if you will, and know, oh, this is what's best for me. Nobody from the outside can actually challenge me or anything like that. I know what's best for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time,
They're
we
wrong.
don't.
We saw that a lot back in the 60s. Some dude would take 4 hits of Purple Owsley and have a wonderful experience and come back from it thinking he had the answers to the universe, which were usually things like only drink celery juice for the rest of your life. That's what's best for me.
Mhm.
And he was inspired to that.
Right, right. Yeah, so autonomy, um, yeah, interesting that Ian brought that up, but it was because that was the first question that I had when you were saying in the beginning of the talk when you mentioned crystallizing and you can do it
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote the right way or some way, and there's another way that one can still
Yeah.
crystallize
Yeah.
and have a false sense
You're
of
just gonna like,
certitude or certainty.
you're veering
Yeah.
off
And
into
that's
crazy
the
town.
importance of having a teacher and a tradition and people who have done this before. There is no greater blessing in my life than the times where my sheikh leaned over to me and said, you know, you're completely full of shit. You didn't know this.
It was said a bit nicer to me than that, but yeah, it's the same thing as like, yeah, you gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself, as
Yeah.
they said back in the day.
Yeah. Or please don't make more work for me. That was another one.
Yep. Or no one likes to hear their backsliding, and I hate to phrase it that way, but sometimes it is kind of like that. Like two steps forward, one step back, and that is I know I'm always normalizing these things because I think it's important for people not to get discouraged, but this is work and it requires a commitment to witness that step backward and do something about it. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Alka, you had your hand up at some point. Would you
Yes.
like to chime in?
Actually, there was a time, I have this since the time we started discussing this. There's a poetry that is ringing in my head. I'm not sure it's exact Urdu, but it's half Urdu, half Hindi, kind of like, Indian style. It's by Allama Iqbal. Um, and I'll first say it in Hindi or Urdu, and then I
Sure.
will try to translate it. I had to Google the English meaning of it, so I'll read it. But there is this beautiful poetry. It says, खुद को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुद को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. The meaning in English is like, it's raise yourself to such a high level of self-worth, effort, and consciousness that before destiny decides anything for you, God Himself asks you what you want. Like in
Snap.
short,
I like that.
Wow. Wow. Lovely.
It's like become so evolved that you're not just accepting fate, you're shaping it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then also, um, because of all these questions, there was this, because of the dichotomy of words and, what we were learning and what we were trying to dissect, I made a one-liner joke, which I would like to say. I'm a joker of the group anyway. So the joke is, I raised myself so high that even destiny now asks, are you free for a quick discussion before I ruin your plans? So that was all my thought.
I love it. Thank you, Alka.
Yeah. And Khalil has found the Urdu.
Yeah, well, we can post that in the forum or maybe in the comments on the video. If I remember, I'll do that. Yeah. And James was sharing that 2 steps forward, 1 step back is totally my experience in this. And 2 forward sort of into ontological, then 1 back into psychological. That's totally fair. And Aram says, I am half forward, 2 backwards. You know what? It's all good. As we're always
Yeah.
saying, Mushtaq quotes that, what was that bus from the 60s that just said,
Further.
further.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's us. Ah, yep, Dean Moriarty. All right, so any last thoughts? Anything we need to cover before we say goodbye, Mushtaq?
Yeah. Remember that what you're after is becoming man number 7
Mm-hmm.
or woman number 7 or whatever you want to be number 7. It's just the
Gentle
big 7.
person,
You
number
want 7 on your t-shirt.
7.
And the way to
I'm a
do
7, just like people do with all those
hey,
Enneagram t-shirts.
yeah, the way you do that is you do the hardest thing in the world, which is take the work seriously and realize that you have to do it and then do it.
Mhm.
Actually do the work. Don't talk about the work. Don't think about the work. Don't dream about the work. Don't go from group to group looking for the work. Just sit down and do the work. If you're wondering what to do, we have 7 years of videos on what to do. Yours for free. Or sit down, be aware of your breath. Hold that awareness until you can be completely conscious while doing it. Easy. Well, it'll be simple. When you do that, and you do that with absolute sincerity, you are working to do proper crystallization and then having a permanent eye and then um, allowing the human attributes to be washed away by the divine attributes. As my teacher used to say, when you reach fana, God takes your ego from you. But because you need your ego to exist, he gives you back an ego, but it's his ego. So you get one that is clean and unwrinkled and no dust on it. It's that simple. And we've just spent all of this time to get to that last little bit. The idea that if you want this, you have to have true sincerity and absolute determination to do the work. That has to be more important than anything else, while not giving up your responsibilities to anything. You got to still pay your rent. You got to still feed yourself. You got to take care of your family. You got to go to work and make money. All of these things that you got to do, you still do that, but you make doing the work the most important part of that. And not giving up the other stuff is part of the work.
Yeah, it becomes the way that you
Yeah.
do all of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's really easy, at least until winter comes, to go up into the Himalayas and sit there and meditate and all of that kind of stuff. But if you leave behind all of the things that you need to do besides that, they will come back and bite you, and not in a good way. Ian, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that is all great. Can't disagree with any of it. But I seem to recall you saying relatively recently that you had never actually met a man number seven, a person number seven.
Yeah, and that's because the only way that you can recognize somebody who is person number seven is if you are person number seven yourself. Nobody can know the state of somebody who has gone beyond them in the work until they reach the state of that person. So I may have theoretically met hundreds of person number seven, but I might have just been too dumb to notice. I have my
Uh,
suspicions about person number seven who I might have hung out with from time to time, one or two of them, but couldn't know it. I wasn't there. Does that make sense?
yeah, I was going to say fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Alka says, but can they recognize your potential to be number seven? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Osama.
For the next call, next meeting, can we start with the end? Because this is, we this is as the Khwajagans, they say where most people end is where we start.
Yeah.
This right here is a
It's
good
the
start.
upside down triangle, Osama. You work your way down there. Yep.
I love
Actually,
it.
yeah, we can do that, I think. Give me a week to go over that with Noor and we'll see what we can come up with. But that might be a good idea. Because
Awesome.
usually, as you have noticed, we save the really good stuff for the last while the lightweights have already gone away.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
All
to all
right.
of you.
So I'm going to switch us over to Brady Bunch mode.
Yeah, I'm gonna save the chat, so I got that poem.
Yeah, it saves the chat for you and I automatically.
Not for me automatically, but for whoever starts
Well,
the thing. Anyways, I
my
got it
dear,
now.
you are you and I. You
Yes.
walk from that room to this room, and the chat is sitting here for you.
I want it on my hard drive, that's all. So, all right, thank you everyone. Thank you, thank you. It's been fun. And two steps forward, one step back, but
That
keep
still gets
going.
you there.
It still
If you
gets
do
you
the
there.
math, it will
Yeah.
still get you there.
Yep. That's half the learning, right? Is
Yeah.
is going, oh shit, I messed up, and moving forward
Yeah, the
anyway.
only time you get a problem is if you're doing one step forward, two steps back.
Mm.
Then you're in
On a
trouble.
bad day.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Are we on Brady Bunch mode?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So we can wave to each other. Wave to everybody watching on the replay. Salams, everybody. Be safe, be well, and we'll catch you next week, hopefully.
With Osama's topic.
Bye.
Bye.